October 16, 2006. Translated by Treasure. Number 7 of the 8 features of souls describe their regional properties. But what does this mean? It means that all souls are bound to reincarnate into those places and cultures where they are most familiar. Black people are bound to reincarnate into black, white people reincarnate into white, and yellow ones into yellow. Japanese individuals usually reincarnate into Japanese cultures, Chinese into Chinese cultures, and Indians into Indian cultural environments. Why is this so? It is because of the structure of life. Water droplets fuse together easily as they also do with milk, but they will never fuse with oil. This is a characteristic of their structures. The apple never falls far from the tree, and so it is with souls because one only feels safe when they are in a familiar environment. The size of a soul world is proportional to the content of its soul. People who live in remote villages all their lives will reincarnate into those same villages because their souls only know those contents and nothing else. The structures of their lives are only in accordance with life in those villages. Structures have attractions like birds of a feather flock together, and similar structures attract each other. Europeans rarely reincarnate as Chinese because the cultures there do not conform to their soul's contents. They lack gravity to them, or it is far less to them than that of their original culture. Anyone who lives in a strange place within an alien culture will feel out of place, lonely, and eager to go home. Going home is every soul's wish, but where is home? The most familiar place is one's home, and home is one's most familiar place. This is to say that souls have regional properties. Generally speaking, one will usually reincarnate into a place that is most familiar to them. We have never heard of a Tibetan living Buddha coming from Africa or Europe. According to the above principle, souls should reincarnate into their own families, and this would prove the regional property of souls. So why do some people reincarnate into places far away? This question involves their carriers of life. Souls are spiritual entities which can only function when they become attached to physical bodies. When one dies but no carrier is available from within their immediate comfort zone, then they will have to find a carrier from within the smallest possible radius of that place. Therefore, if one wants to find their late relative, then they should search within a radius of 10, then 20, then 50, and then within 100 kilometers of their home to find a family that has been blessed with a newborn child soon after their relative's passing. They can then check the birthmark of the child, or sense of the child by their hearts of whether the child is the reincarnation of their departed loved one. Of course, if their relative has gone to heaven or another space, then they might never be found. Some people may not accept the concept of souls' regional properties, though they can be verified thusly. Everyone's dreams reflect the contents of their souls. Then would the vast majority of Europeans dream of Asian or African people when they sleep? Of course they would not. Even if one lives in a foreign society now, the frequency of foreign people appearing in their dreams will be low, unless in the next lifetime will some fragments emerge in your dreams. This can raise a great mystery of life. Where do we go in our afterlives? Consider that if no relevant familiar images of heaven fill your consciousnesses, then how could you go there? The truth is that this would be impossible because the transformation of life is subject to strict and meticulous management and the restraint of Tao, which is a scientific system. If you hope to go to heaven but know nothing about it or are only minimally aware of it, then your soul would be totally unprepared to go there. If you know and understand the guide, then you could find him easily. If not, then it would be much more difficult. And if you have no concept of him at all, then you would not recognize him even if he were standing at your side. The 1,000-year world is the easiest place to which people can advance, but you must understand it, so please study it. You must self-cultivate and self-refine according to the lifestyle of the celestials who live there. In this way, your consciousnesses will be focused there and you can go there directly after you pass on. Life is like this: the more we know, the larger our scope of activities will be. What does not exist in our consciousness has no existence in our life. Therefore, we need to make full use of our limited physical time to expand our life spaces. Do not long for the ephemeral, passing mortal world, but for a better place. Understand the place for which you yearn as much as possible. Be reasonable and willing to advance.
投胎与堕胎
Reincarnation and abortion. Jiefeng. July 8, 2011. Translated by Tong Xin. What is a fetus? In Chinese, the word translates to a house that is built over a period of about 1 month. Note: fetus is written in Chinese as tai. The left part means month and the right part means pavilion. Zygotes are less than 1 month old and embryos are less than 2 months old and neither can be called fetuses. Rather, they are only fertilized eggs. Is an unfertilized egg a life? Of course not. A chicken can only hatch from one which has been fertilized, only when the time is right for it to do so, and only then can we call it a life. Can we call a fertilized egg a life? No, because it has no self-awareness. Only those things with self-awareness can be called lives. Otherwise, man-made mechanical devices such as trains and cars would qualify as such. The meaning of a fetus is the house that is built within 1 to several months, and it is therefore not a life, but the house for a life that will come to live inside of it. On the matter of reincarnation, it is the spiritual entity, namely the soul of a life, that enters into the house which is built for it. It is only when this soul of a life enters into a fetus that it becomes a life. When does the soul of a life reincarnate? Reincarnation usually happens at about 10 days before birth, while most of the process happens during the 3 days before birth. Many cases from examples from throughout history in different cultures prove this. The conclusion leads us to believe that fetuses in wombs can be called lives from only about 10 days before their births, otherwise they are not lives, but houses waiting for new lives to enter. Christianity and Buddhism regard abortions as sins because they kill lives. Such views are wrong because they do not reflect the facts. If we take a fertilized egg or a fetus as a life, then the concepts of heaven, hell, and reincarnation cannot exist because many new lives are born, many old ones die continuously, and one could only live for one life as a human, and this is clearly not true. Should a young girl who becomes pregnant after having sex without any knowledge and methods of contraception abort her growing embryo or fetus? Please do not preach morality here. It is useless at this time, and we should only consider the ramifications of whether she should carry to term or not. If you do not agree that she should abort, would you be willing to be responsible for the nursing and rearing of her child? If you will not do this but speak loudly against her abortion and say that abortion is a sin and a crime, please explain where your moral responsibility is. Life genuine is the final course for human beings. Everything is concluded by the final course. 清扫生命通道. Clear the passage of life. Jiefeng. August 14, 2017. Translated by Fengxing. By the existence of things we profit, and by the non-existence of things we are served. For something to be useful, it must be empty. Water can only flow freely through pipelines that are empty. If they are not empty, its flow will be restricted. The most obvious example is how drains in kitchens and washrooms become blocked when garbage clogs the pipes. A pipe clogged by garbage is useless. The only way to solve that problem is to remove the garbage, otherwise it becomes useless. Life is like a passage which must be kept clear. Once extra clutter enters it, life will become weak and powerless, will be rigid and corrupted and even useless. When I study life and contrast a life that is bound for heaven with the one that is going to hell, I find that the passage of heaven-bound lives is clear, whereas the ones of hell-bound lives are filled with extra clutter and are badly blocked. What exactly blocks the passage of life? Above all, we must learn what life is. Life is a non-material structure with spirituality, which shows its character mainly through the consciousness, also called the soul. Actually, life, soul, and consciousness are the same thing. In order to talk about it more conveniently and clearly, I substitute consciousness for life, and when I speak of consciousness, I really mean life. Life's passage is blocked right by clutter in the consciousness. Let us examine the types of things that clutter our consciousness. Joy, anger, sorrow, happiness, grief, fear, and fright do it. Property, money, reputation, status, and power do it. Tao, virtue, benevolence, righteousness, courtesy, and faith do it. Relatives, families, nationalities, groups, political parties, religions, and nations do it. Faith, ideals, successes, proposals, and targets do it. All of our knowledge, education, and experience does it. All the views which have been formed about life, values, life, and the universe do it. Ideas from traditions and religions do it. Everything listed above are obstacles that block the passage of life. Now let us look at the teachings of Laozi, Sakyamuni, and Jesus. The core of Laozi's teachings is nothingness, returning to being a baby. Sakyamuni's teachings focus on being empty. One's mind should not abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dharma. Your mind should not abide in anything. The core of Jesus's teachings is, you should be converted and become one as little child. The teachings of celestial Buddha and God focus on one point, that is clearing the passage of life. Why should we clean life to keep it flowing smoothly? The answer is obvious. When a water pipe is blocked, it is useless. When a bedroom is stuffed, no one can occupy it. When the passage of life is blocked, life will lack of nimbus and will slip down toward hell, so it is necessary to clear the passage of life. With respect to real life, the more possessions that one owns, the more trouble, worries, fright, and the less freedom, elegance, and flexibility they have. The more that clutters their consciousness, the more rigid, possessive, stubborn, and conservative they become, the more they dare not to take one step beyond the limit. A life like this actually becomes more miserable, tiring, and tragical. Einstein once said that what prevented him from thinking was the education he had received. I can tell you that what prevents one from achieving happiness, joy, freedom, and blessing comes from what they have possessed in their consciousness. And what prevents mankind from achieving peace, happiness, and sustained prosperity is exact what they hold fast to. I understand fully the broad way to heaven and how a person achieves a happy life, and I know clearly how mankind can avoid man-made and natural disasters and how to realize a sustainable development, but more importantly, I know how a life can arrive in heaven. However, few believe my words because people's passages of life are too cluttered. Accordingly, if one wants a better life and wants to arrive in heaven, they must clear their own life passage first.
生命的高峰体验和极乐妙境
The peak experience and bliss state of life. Jiefeng. September 30th, 2011. Translated by Treasure. The prestigious American psychologist, Abraham Harold Maslow, has presented his theory of the hierarchical needs of life, in which he postulates that self-realization is the highest need of one's life, that the most perfect symbol of obtaining the highest need is peak experiences, and that his definition of it is a strong identity experience. I will summarize the following 18 characteristics of its specific intention here. Everything blends into one harmonious and integrated whole. Becoming an integral part of nature by losing oneself and melting into it. Being in the best state as when a river flows vigorously. Being good at what one does and handling things with great facility. Being full of confidence as if all can be conquered. Being free from suffering and optimistic about everything. Being as unsophisticated and pure as a newborn baby. Being flexible and tactical and improvise at will. Being unique by blooming one's own nature fully. Being absorbed in the present. Being unworldly and regarding spiritual pursuit as supreme. Being in a state of perfection with abundant essence, chi, and spirit. Being poetic and full of mysterious ecstasy. Release one's energy completely and being clear, bright, and fresh, and as if all inner. Feeling fresh, clear, and being free from hostility and hate within. Being free from worldly affairs and at absolute peace. Immersing oneself within the ecstasy of delight and feeling everything's amazement. Being overjoyed and grateful for God's. How many people can enjoy the peak experience that is described above? I suppose very few. What does that wonderful state that obsesses you and makes you lose yourself and meld with the outside world feel like? Consider the following descriptions. I feel like I am in heaven. I have a vague sense of vertigo, that exciting warmth, fullness, wetness, and power. I feel extremely excited and out of breath, At the same time, my head becomes as light as a feather, as if I were dreaming with a vague, distant voice in a stagnant moment. Joy, pleasure, excitement, and thrill all make me madly joyous. I feel so terrific, seems in my body's best state. I feel as if I were awakening into a new life which had just begun at that moment. It felt wonderful, almost unbearable ecstasy for human being. Charming, blood-rushing, desperate, gone with the spirit, absolute excitement, wonderful, intoxicating, powerful, beauty beyond words. In some aspects, my libido awakens me and gives me a chance to transcend myself, awakening from the dense fog of daily life and being. I feel as if being away from my flesh, from my spirit, with no care for everything that matters to my daily self. My life stays here like the eternal, but all in one instant, tasting the sweetness and beauty of life, blending into each other mightily. An amazing feeling, my own self-existence in another dimension, floating and melting from the supporting point of my life. A sudden gush of roaring fire, strong, devouring, wonderful. A pleasant, refreshing, irresistible sensation, growing until it becomes a rapid, high-altitude, screaming rocket with blast-like pleasure appearing in my sexual organs and then radiating throughout my entire body while everything else has gone. My inside feels full of vitality. Its strength, wetness, heat, and intensity feel wonderful. For almost the complete time, all sorts of burning, wonderful sensations radiate from within my thighs as if everything around me has ceased to exist, and I am completely immersed in this wonderful feeling. Until now, I haven't found a more wonderful feeling in my entire life. The sensation is an utter immersion without willpower and disconnected from my mind. It conquers me completely and occupies my body. The best word to describe this physiological sensation, in terms of its destructive overall effect, is temerarious. The only physical feeling that I can equate it to would be some forms of stiffness and tension, and also the indistinguishable internal explosion of the parts of my sex organs. My body tightens gradually, my feeling reaches a steep peak of bliss, and then I reach an extremely joyous high plateau and let sharp screams out and slip across this feeling of bliss peak. Then my body convulses violently 5 or 6 times, sharply and intensely at first, then more bluntly, slowly, and gently. The descriptions above describe the peak experiences of reaching sexual climaxes. In his investigative report spanning 5 continents, Maslow stated that there are 2 methods for mankind to acquire peak experiences. One is sex, the other is music. Sex is the most common way to acquire those peak experiences. The supreme realm for Buddhist study is entering the Elysium world, and doing so means immersing into those peak experiences eternally. In order to enter the Elysium world, one must achieve an enlightened heart that is perceptive of nature, for Buddha is nature and nature is Buddha. Actually, mankind's sexual love experiences are comparatively low-level, and those peak experiences that are attained through them are short-lived. To attain eternal peak experiences, one must achieve self-harmony. That is to say, a life must possess both yin and yang and be completely free from the external sexual supplement, but remain in the state of oneness with yin and yang, just as the yin-yang fish shows in Taoism. Only that means entering into the Elysium world where one can experience the peak experiences of life. Then, how does one achieve self-harmony? This is an enormous, complex, and systematic project of self-refinement and self-improvement. What I do each day is to guide Chanyuan celestials to develop towards self-harmony. To recap briefly, in order to achieve self-harmony, you need to meet these 4 requirements. You must de-weed your soul garden completely. You must pay back all your debts from all of your past lives. You must accumulate enough merits and virtues in heaven. Your consciousness must ascend to the perfect state like a celestial being or Buddha. The building and living experiences of the new oasis for life are all for fulfilling the above tasks. I designed the new oasis for life carefully, including its locations and all the details of its planning and building. At present, all Chanyuan celestials who have taken part in building and experiencing the life in it can have joy, happiness, freedom, and blessings here. They will feel the peak experiences continuously and finally attain self-harmony in order to enter into the celestial island continent and enjoy eternal bliss. In fact, Buddha and Bodhisattva have already revealed the way to attain self-harmony and enjoy the peak experience of life and bliss long ago, as described in Heart Sutra. When Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, Lord who looks down with compassion, attained enlightenment through his profound wisdom, he realized that all forms, feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and cognitions are only illusions. With this realization, he moved beyond all suffering and difficulty. Sariputra. Therefore, the tangible comes from the invisible which contains it. There are no essential differences between the two, and the same applies for feelings, thoughts, behavior, and cognition. No matter which of the above, none of their natures have birth or death, being or non-being, defilement or purity, or increasing or decreasing. Therefore, the nature of the world and of life is invisible. Neither any individuals nor any of their sensations listed above really exist. Thinking and our physical perceptions of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling mislead us into our illusions and apply questions to our cognitions about good versus evil, ego versus non-ego, wise versus unwise, life versus death, and attainment versus non-attainment of supreme dharma. All of these perceptions are only illusions. The Bodhisattva relied on the wisdom that could bring him to the shores of freedom. He was entirely free from worry and thus overcame all fears and all that upset him, leaving behind this distorted, illusory world and ultimately attaining nirvana. All Buddhas of the past, present, and future have and will continue to rely on that same wisdom to bring them to the shores of freedom, help to attain supreme authentic wisdom. Therefore know that wisdom that can bring us to the shore of freedom is a great spiritual mantra, a great bright mantra, a supreme mantra, an unequaled mantra. It can remove all suffering. It is genuine and not false. It reads, go, go, go. Go to the other shore with transcending wisdom. Go to the realm of freedom. Go to attain enlightenment soon, just go. Finally, I want to repeat the last words of Heart Sutra. Go, go, go. Go to the other shore with transcending wisdom. Go to the realm of freedom. Go to attain enlightenment soon, just go.
有关生命和生命轮回的8个小秘密。
8 Secrets on Life and Samsara. Jiefeng. June 18, 2011. Translated by Treasure. The total number of lives is fixed. The total number of lives in the Earth universe is fixed and does not vary. This is to say that the total number of lives is fixed and that the only changes are from the phenomena of the reincarnation of lives. This is as with the fixed quantity of water on Earth. If there is a drought somewhere, it does not mean that it has decreased. If there is a flood somewhere else, it does not mean that it has increased. Leave a bowl of water in the sun until it evaporates completely. Has it died? Of course not, it has reincarnated. When clouds float in and rain falls from them, has more water been produced? Of course not, it has just reincarnated onto the Earth. Unless the whole system of the Earth changes, the total amount of water on it will never change. It will neither increase nor decrease, just reincarnate. It may reincarnate into icebergs, the sea, the earth, or clouds. Water runs in cycles like this for thousands of years. The number of people on the Earth has increased, so does this mean that new lives have been born? Of course not. These so-called new lives are just reincarnated from other spaces into the Earth. If the number of people on the Earth increases, the number of animals may decrease. If that of animals increases, that of humans may decrease. If that of lives in hell decrease, that of lives in the animal world may increase. If the number of people on Earth suddenly decreases dramatically for a period of time, where have those lives gone? Are they dead? Of course they have not disappeared. They may have gone to heaven, hell, the plant layer, or the animal world. In short, the amount of life in the Earth universe remains the same, just as with the total amount of water on Earth. The lower a life's level is, the greater its quantity is. The amount of insects is surely greater than that of birds, That of grass is surely greater than that of herbivores. That of herbivores is surely greater than that of carnivores. That of non-humans is surely greater than that of humans. That of lives in hell is surely greater than that of lives in heaven. And that of human lives is surely greater than that of celestial beings. The question then becomes, why is the number of super-celestial beings in the celestial islands continent greater than that of humans on the earth? Is this a contradiction? Up to now, the number of super-celestial beings has been 30 billion, while that of humans has only risen to 7 billion. Does this phenomenon go against the law that the lower a life level is, the greater that level's amount of lives is? Actually, no. From a static point of view, the number of super-celestial beings is larger than that of humans, but from a dynamic point of view, the number of human beings is still larger. The number of super-celestial beings has not changed across hundreds of millions of years, but the total number of humans has been trillions during the same time period. Things, including lives, are valued according to their scarcity. Jesus Christ told us that the road taken by great numbers leads to destruction, lower life spaces, but that only a small number will take the way to life. From this perspective, when a person views things as the masses do, then they will go toward lower life spaces. When the masses go a certain way and you follow them, then surely it will be toward lower life spaces. Only those who concentrate on the things that common people ignore and remain indifferent to the things that common people value highly have any hope of ascending to higher life spaces. Bad people must outnumber good people. According to the law of the amount of lower-level life being greater than that of higher-level life, it can be deduced that the number of evil people surely exceeds that of righteous people. This is also to say that the number of ignorant people is more than that of laities, that of laities is more that of mortals is more than that of sages, and theirs is more than that of celestials. It is as in human society where the number of common workers exceeds that of business managers, that of managers exceeds that of city mayors, that of mayors exceeds that of provincial governors and ministers, and theirs is greater than that of national presidents and prime ministers. Any other arrangement would be chaotic and disorderly. Life is easy to reincarnate into lower life spaces, but hard to sublimate into higher life spaces. In human society, it is easier to commit crimes than to become role models and easier to become bad examples than good ones because it is easier to appease one's flesh than to sublimate their souls. People like to cater to the values of the masses which fall into the category of high quantity but low quality of life, so it is much easier to reincarnate towards lower life spaces, and many do that unconsciously. Therefore, when the masses believe that, when a boy grows up, he takes a wife and when a girl does so she finds a husband, it is a natural outlook on life and you can predict the results when you take it as your own. When you follow the masses who are making money and doing business with companies, the consequences of reincarnation can be foreseen, but when you follow those who practice Qigong to attain Buddhahood or become celestials, you will certainly achieve a very different result. The number of people who are going to higher level spaces is small. Ordinary people have inertia, are unwilling to accept new ideas, new thinking, and new values, and prefer traditions that they are unwilling to surrender, so it is hard for them to sublimate towards higher level spaces. Leopards cannot change their spots. Peonies have shown their nature for thousands of years, as have lotuses, willows, cattle, and sheep. Without external forces or infiltration from different structures, material will not change. Without guidance from gods, Buddhas, celestials, demons, goblins, or monsters, we will always remain human. Therefore, in the process of reincarnation, we must approach those who have the consciousness of celestials, Buddhas, and gods. If we hear their teachings and practice them, then we will be blessed greatly. In the same way, if we follow people with elusive thinking, it will surely lead us astray. If you want to sublimate your life to higher level spaces, then you must never follow the words and deeds of like-minded people. A leopard cannot change its spots, and it is very difficult to change a person. Therefore, every stylite must remain awake. If there is no experience of being reborn, then their own life will be difficult to sublimate. The direction of life is determined by our consciousness when we are dying. The direction of life is determined by people's consciousness at the moment when they retire from this world. We know that the essence of life is determined by its non-material structure, which is mainly shaped by its type of consciousness, its non-material structure, and its life state. Therefore, if someone attains the consciousness of an animal at the very moment when they leave the world, then they must go to the animal world after they die, but if they attain the consciousness of a celestial being when they leave the world, then they must go to fairyland, and so on. A question arises here. If one maintains a human consciousness throughout their life, can they suddenly attain Buddhist consciousness and go to the Pure Land at the moment of their physical departure? The answer is no. There is no possibility of a qualitative change without an accumulation of smaller quantitative changes, nor can anyone overcome the gravity of their life. Additionally, human consciousnesses develop toward the places where their treasures lie. If they lack any accumulation of treasures in heaven, it will be impossible for them to attain the quality of life in heaven without having their treasure there. Where our treasures lie, so too will our hearts be, and there we will find our futures. The imprinting of life's reincarnation. Geneticists know that human DNA carries genetic information, and that people who have had physical injuries in their bodies in previous lives have been imprinted with those injuries in their current lives. By observing what people say and do, we can trace back to their previous lives. And just as geologists know the changes that have taken place by studying landforms and geological structures, we can infer the ages of people by observing their appearances. As we study different kinds of people, we can see that some had been specific types of animals in their previous lives, some must have been humans, and some are from heaven. Sherlock Holmes's ability to solve crimes came from his mastery of details, and how he could make judgments based on clues left at the scenes of crimes, including where the criminal came from and their basic characteristics, because everything is imprinted, just as with the reincarnation of life. This gives us the message that in order to ascend one's life to heaven, all their human imprints must be eliminated. The mystery of Mengpa soup. Note: Mengpa is the Lady of Forgetfulness in Chinese mythology. It is said in Sutra of Hell's King that ghosts in hell who qualify to reincarnate upward are offered a bowl of Mengpa soup, also called ecstasy soup, to each one, which cause them to forget their previous lives before joining the mortal world as new lives. This is both great compassion and a law that keeps all kinds of lives in order and maintains their dynamic balance. If their memories of previous lives were not eliminated, then human society would be unthinkable. What kind of relationships would exist if people learned that in a previous life, their children were enemies, that their spouse was their grandmother, that a close friend was their enemy, or that their pet was their child? It would create complete chaos and their thinking would be confused. Therefore, the lower level a life is, the more their memories of previous lives must be eliminated. Otherwise, not only would the mortal world be chaotic, but even heaven would be. Each life's information about their previous lives are in codes which cannot be revealed or deciphered randomly. These are cosmic secrets, and if they were to be revealed, conflicts and disasters would result inevitably. The vast majority of people live in confusion and are unaware of the universe's secrets. This is why Jesus said, "To you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to those who are without, all these things are done in parables, and that seeing they may see but not perceive, and hearing they may hear but not understand, lest at any time they should be converted and their sins should be forgiven." The mysteries of life are endless and interesting to explore.
人能轮回成动物的4个逻辑推理。
The 4 logical reasons why human being can reincarnate into animals. Jiefeng. March 20, 2021. There are many cases recorded in books about the reincarnation of people into animals. There are also many cases of the use of hypnosis in contemporary Western society to remind people that they have been animals in previous lives. Readers who are interested can search for articles about people's reincarnation into animals on the internet. Human beings can reincarnate into animals, and animals can also reincarnate into human beings. The logical reasoning is as follows. The sum of positive and negative energies in the universe is 0. This is a law of the universe. This law tells us that what we get is always equal to what we give. If you get something, you must pay. If you pay, you will get it. Otherwise, there would be no rules of heaven. Also, it's a loss of justice and fairness. From this law, we can know that, when one receives something from someone else, he must repay it in some way. There are many ways to repay. one of which is to become animals raised by creditors, which can be pigs, dogs, cattle, horses, sheep, chickens, etc. Therefore, there is a folk saying, "I cannot repay your great kindness. I would like to be one of your cattle or your horse in the next life." This is true. There are not many people who raise animals in modern society, especially those who grow up and live in cities. It is difficult for people to become domesticated animals to repay their debts. They can only go to large farms to reincarnate and provide meat for human being to compensate for their debts. Life is a kind of non-material structure with spirituality. Usually people call it a soul, and its essence is consciousness. Whatever kind of consciousness you have, you will be reincarnated into that kind of life. This is also a law, also called the law of heaven. When observing people according to this law, you will find that there are quite a few people in the population whose state of consciousness is not much different from a certain type of animal, but can also be very similar to a certain animal in nature that it can even be compared to. Therefore, these people will reincarnate into animals after their physical bodies die. There is a law of life balance in the universe which tells us that life is always in a state of dynamic balance, just like the ratio of men and women in human beings is always maintained at 51 to 49, although in a specific time and place the ratio may exceed 51 to 49, but macroscopically this ratio remains unchanged, which is called dynamic balance. In nature, the number of any species has an upper limit. Once the upper limit is exceeded, the balance mechanism will come into effect, and the number will decline and be reduced. From this we know that there will be a transformation between humans and animals. Once there are more people, there will be fewer animals, and once there are fewer people, there will be more animals. Where do these other animals come from? They are reincarnated from human beings. The human world is a transfer station for life at all levels. This is what I discovered when I observed the continent of the three realms that lives pass through. That is to say, human beings, but not only human beings, but there are also gods, Buddhas, immortals, demons, spirits, monsters, ghosts, lions, tigers, wolves, cows, horses, pigs, sheep, chickens, dogs, etc. among them. Except insects, microorganisms, shrimps, flowers, and some trees that do not participate in the life reincarnation system, all other kinds of life have their own representatives living in human society in the form of human beings. This phenomenon shows that animals can become human beings, and human beings can become animals. From the above four laws, the laws of heaven, it can be concluded that people can reincarnate into animals. Knowing this truth gives us the following four revelations and warnings. Never owe debts to others. This debt includes economic debts and emotional debts, as well as debts owed to nature. Even if it is obtained from parents and children, it must be repaid. Examine whether there is a certain animal consciousness in your consciousness. If so, get rid of it as soon as possible. Do not harm domestic animals and wild animals as much as possible, otherwise you will be in great danger of being reincarnated into the animal world. Listen to the teachings of sages and try to stay away from demons and spirits. What one should always keep in mind is that divine punishments are slow but sure, like big nets that let nothing slip through them, and heaven will not spare anyone.
生命奥秘声波能量
The mysteries of life, energy of sound waves. Jiefeng. November 28, 2021. Sound waves have frequencies, and different frequencies carry different energies. Different energies have different effects on the world and on life. Any kind of sound will have an impact on the world and life, either a beneficial or harmful impact. When two people quarrel, the sound will have a harmful influence on other people. If two people talk sweetly, the sound will have a beneficial influence on other people. Every sound has its own wavelength and bandwidth like those of sound waves. Different sound waves have different values and functions. Sound waves can be a panacea for healing or a powerful weapon for killing. Avalokite. Vara Heart Mantra Om Mani Padme Hum has magical sound waves, has the function and magical effect of enhancing truth, goodness and beauty and suppressing falsehoods, evil and ugliness. Regular chanting is beneficial to the sublimation of life. When reciting Amitabha, if the A is pronounced as A, it will cause endless harm, But if it is pronounced as a, one will benefit infinitely. What is the reason? Because the sound waves of a and a are different, and since the sound waves are different, their energy is different, their properties are different, their functions are different, and their effects are different. Every time I hear someone pronounce umitba as a umitba, I feel bad, very uncomfortable, want to lose my temper and feel like falling into a dark abyss. But when I hear someone say a umitba, I feel joy. It makes people feel calm, emotionally stable, and feel like they have entered the kingdom of heaven. Everyone knows the story of Meng Jiangnu crying at the Great Wall. How powerful is Meng Jiangnu's crying? It is said, she cried until the sun and the moon were dimmed, it was dark all around, and the autumn wind howled, the sea waves ran high, and the Great Wall collapsed section by section, covering a distance of 250 miles. Of course, this is an exaggerated description by writers, but the sound waves of Meng Jiangnu's crying have been oscillating in the sky of history, and they directly affect human beings today. The unjust case of Dou Yi is also a well-known story. Dou Yi was wronged and swore that there will be snow in June, and 3 years of severe drought in Chuzhou, and her oath came true. The walls of Jericho in the Bible is a well-known story among Christians. After the death of Moses, Joshua served as the leader of the Jews and continued to lead the Jews to march to Canaan. After crossing the Jordan River on the way to Canaan, one must first enter the city of Jericho. But the walls of Jericho were strong, and the Canaanites would not allow the Jews to enter the city, so the Jews marched around the city for 7 days. After the end of the 7th day, the priests blew their horns, and the Jews shouted loudly at the same time. Then the walls of Jericho collapsed to the sound of trumpets and the shouts of the Jews. It is said that stones weighing several tons or even dozens of tons that were used in the construction of the Egyptian pyramids were not pulled up manually, nor were they hoisted up by mechanical equipment. Instead, a spell was placed on the stone, and then someone recited the spell, and the stone floated into the air. The floating stones also fit tightly into the city wall, and followed the voice of the mantra chanter. Are sound waves that powerful? Many people must know the Chladni figures in the history of science. The German physicist Chladni put a very wide and thin metal sheet on a violin, and evenly sprinkled fine sand on the metal sheet, and then Chladni played the violin with a bow. As a result, the fine sand on the metal sheet was arranged into a beautiful pattern. With the change of the melody and frequency of the piano sound, those beautiful patterns changed shape continuously, forming an ever-changing pattern, which is known as the Chladni figures. The Chladni figures proves that sound waves will cause changes in surrounding objects, cause snow to fall in June, cause city walls to collapse, and of course cause heavy rains that pour down, overflowing floods, and will even turn a drought to cause an area to become a desert, and create hailstones that will become as big as footballs. Now let's look at the relationship between sound wave energy and life. To gain vigorous vitality, life needs to absorb powerful energy. The stronger the energy, the more vigorous life will be. And sound wave energy is a kind of life energy that cannot be ignored. But it must be noticed that sound wave energy can be beneficial or harmful. Which are beneficial and which are harmful sound wave energies? All sound waves that can make people feel joyful, calm, comfortable, and are uplifting are beneficial sound wave energies, such as beautiful songs and tunes, the whispers of lovers, the peaceful words of saints, the chirping of birds, etc. The sound waves that can make people anxious, bored, worried, and listless are harmful energies, such as the complaints and nagging of others, hoarse shouting, the growling of quarrel makers, and the croaking of crows, etc. From this we know that all positive, active, optimistic, romantic, and musical sound waves are beneficial to life, and all negative, passive, pessimistic, unromantic, and noisy sound waves are harmful to life. This is true not only for others but also for oneself. That is to say, when a person swears, he hurts others as well as himself. In short, the sounds you like to hear are beneficial to you, and the sounds you don't like are harmful to you. I hope that everyone can absorb the sound wave energies that are beneficial to their lives every day.
自私